Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Michael Octrim. Michael has been married to his beautiful, successful wife, Carrie, since 2004. They have 4 children and live in the western suburbs of Chicago. Michael coaches his children in a variety of sports and loves being outdoors and active with his family year-round. Michael has published multiple books on health and wellness. Death Resistant, a common sense guide to live long and drop dead healthy, has been translated into multiple languages and is available wherever fine books are sold. And I'm just going to start diving into what we talked about. Today, we talked about what is health? What is good nutrition? What is good movement? And how can we live longer, feel better, and just be healthier overall? And it was such a great conversation. Michael had great tips, and I love how he made this so user-friendly, so uncomplicated that we would stop stopping ourselves, because we would realize it isn't rocket science, that we could actually do this if we would stop over complicating the thing called health, the thing called fitness, the thing called nutrition, eating. It was so good today. Tune in. You are sure to be inspired. I am so excited to welcome Michael Octrim to the Sisterhood of Sweat today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you and your listeners today.
Michael is just so easy to talk to. You guys are going to love him today. We were already having a good conversation before I pushed record, and that's when I know it's going to be gold. And I love the topic we are bringing to you today. How afraid have we been of death lately? It has been out the wazoo with the talks about the fear, the pandemic, the war, all of it. And Michael caught my attention when in my inbox, it said something like become death resistant. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, let's do it. So Michael, before we hop into that, we are going to talk a lot about longevity today, you guys, about living long and living well. But Michael, you have to have a backstory to be the person to bring this message. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the health space.
Absolutely. So when I was a little guy growing up, I came up in a suburban Chicago neighborhood. It was like a middle upper class, and it was a great upbringing. I had wonderful parents and wonderful siblings, and everything's fantastic. And I suffered a little bit from what was called affluenza. John McEnroe talks about that with his family, where, you know, sometimes we're a little spoiled, you know, so we would go to the little swim club there and we could eat whatever we want and drink whatever we want. And, you know, our parents did it because they loved us, but at some point it was to my detriment, where, you know, around age 10 to ages 13, I was this chubby, husky little kid. And as many of us know, when you're at that age, that middle school, going into high school age, kids can be a little ruthless and they can be mean and tease you. And it hurt my confidence and really derailed me from being this like active athletic kid growing up. And I went into high school and I was just kind of a shell of who I was. And I played golf my freshman year. And after that season in the fall, I stumbled my way into the weight room. And there was this big football player guy on the freshman team named Ray Moland. And he saw me come in and he was very warm and welcoming and said, "Hey man, I see you want to work out. Come on, jump in here. Let me show you how to do some stuff." And we did this workout on the bench where we're pressing the weights and he's taking me through the whole thing. And it was fantastic. It was something that was immediate in that I felt this like cascade of these feel-good hormones and this rush. And I could see my muscles getting pumped up and it was amazing. And then for the next 3 days, I couldn't lift my arms because I had never worked out before. And I was just beat up. But through that pain, I said, man, I love this. I fell in love with it. And I have worked out consistently every day since. And along the way, I've just been a great student of health and wellness and all different aspects of it. At some point, it's more focused on bodybuilding or strength training or powerlifting or all these different things. But what I did was over the 30 years, I started to curate some of this information and started to share it with people and found that there was really a need for it. People were like soaking it up. And so that then took me down the professional trail of becoming, just involved in the fitness world and different facets and writing and that kind of stuff.
So you really felt, I mean, this is actually very similar. I had Body by Jake on, and you'll have to go back and listen to that episode and hear his story about how he said he was this chubby kid and his dad kept recommending for him to lift weights. And he would be like, you look at the barbell and, eating his Twinkies or whatever. And then it was said it was just like this moment one day when he was just, the music was playing, he was looking at the barbell and he picked it up. He said, my middle was hanging out over my pants. And, he was just, he started pumping iron.
Uh-huh.
And he said he was just, kind of a nerdy little kid. Like he was just saying like, that's his version of himself. I would never say that about somebody. And that he just like fell in love with lifting. And, I think it's so empowering.
Absolutely.
When we realize how much we could take charge of who we are and how we show up. And that is a game changer, that self-care, the lifting of the weights, the getting the endorphins flowing. What do you love about it the most?
I love that people always want to talk about the mind-body connection. But what I realized was that it's really the other way around. It's the body-mind connection that if I'm feeling like wonderful and elated and I'm walking on cloud nine, I can work out, and that takes me down a peg. It helps me realize like, yeah, things are going great, but let's put it in perspective and let's be a little bit more tempered in our approach, and vice versa. If I'm feeling a little blue or down or anxious, I can get in there and slang weights and burn it off. And I realize, hey, you know what? I feel pretty good, right? Like things are pretty good. I shouldn't be so down or glum. And that's what I love. It's a great way for me to get a reset wherever I'm at in life. It helps me just get back to that homeostasis of that midline. And I think that's really important because, as you know, life takes you on those highs and lows all the time. And so being able to have a tool like that in my toolkit that I can access anytime, anywhere, it's so liberating. It really can change your life. And I wish more people would identify it and not stop seeing it as like, oh, it's work. I don't want to work out. It's like, no, it's this phenomenal tool that you have at your disposal. And if you just tap into it more often, it could help in so many different ways.
I just really believe in the whole mind body connection. And when I go to the gym, many times I think I couldn't climb it. Maybe I couldn't, I think there's a rope hanging and I think I couldn't climb that to the top. And then I try, and then I try again and I try again, and I do.
Absolutely.
Maybe I failed the first 2 times, but it would be a direct correlation to something in my life that I thought I couldn't do. I didn't see myself as a business owner. I didn't see myself as a leader. I didn't see myself as a speaker. I didn't see myself as a podcast host. So I think when you're working out and you do something a little more than you thought you could, and you realize, wow, I could do hard things, it builds belief. It builds belief in yourself. And I think that what you do physically can translate into all aspects of your life. And that's why I'm all about sweat, but it's just about the empowerment of pushing yourself and realizing what you could actually accomplish if you pushed yourself. And you've written this whole book, being death resistant. And I know we love the whole idea of longevity. what is health? What is healthy? What is health? People think they know, but I think maybe they don't.
So when it comes to these things, I try to keep them simple. And I think Phil Maffetone had the best explanation of it. He says it's all of the body's organs playing nice together. And I think that's pretty good, right? I think, if it's all humming along, then you're healthy.
So as long as everything's working together, we're good. We're healthy. As long as everything is working together. What about when it gets out of balance?
So here's how you think about it. So do you ever, it's more of kind of a guy thing, but did you ever do you get into the like superhero kind of stuff? You ever watch like the Marvel or the DC stuff?
Well, yes,
You like that?
everybody,
Yeah.
yes.
So my wife is in love with Jason Momoa. He's Aquaman. You know that guy? It's like the long
I
hair,
know
the
who that
tattoos.
is.
Yeah, she loves that guy. So I like to use the Jason Momoa Aquaman kind of analogy. He has a trident. And so if you think of the staff of the trident as health, his three tines on there are kind of what feed into that. And you have nutrition, movement, and recovery. And so what we would find is that for most people, one of those pieces or two of those pieces in general is out of sync, meaning like they're doing great workouts, their movement's fantastic, they're walking regularly, they're lifting heavy things, they're running sprints, like all those things are in line. Their mobility is good, but maybe they're living on junk food because they're stress eating or whatever that is. Or maybe their sleep is not doing great because they're staying up binge watching Netflix.
Right.
And so what we talk with people about is trying to figure out, okay, what levers do we need to pull? What are the health sins that you have going that we need to atone for? And that's where we can get that back into alignment. And for each of us, it's going to vary over a lifetime. I'm sure you've experienced this in your life where, maybe your nutrition is dialed in, but you're just not sleeping as much as you should because your business is starting or whatever that is.
Right.
Or your fitness is fantastic. You're out doing this great conditioning, but you're running around and you're not eating properly. So
Mhm.
that's how I would encourage people to think about health.
So I think you made a very good point there. And so I'm just going to try to bring it home a little bit more. So basically, if I'm stressed out to the max, but I'm eating all these healthy greens, that almost could cancel that out. So it's all about the whole full circle. And you talk a lot about circles, and I
Mhm.
love that, because a lot of times we're thinking it's just one thing. We think if we want great abs and a six pack, I'm going to do hundreds of crunches. But I left out, oh, abs are made in the kitchen too.
Mhm.
Um, or, oh, I'm fighting with my spouse a lot and that shoots my cortisol up. So
Yep.
now I have a belly, even though I'm eating perfect and I'm working out. So tell us about the circle.
So think of three circles that are kind of like a Venn diagram to start. We call those the circles of life. And so you have recovery at the top, then you go to the side of it a little bit and down, you have movement, and then connecting the three, you have nutrition. And so then you can break each of those out. And so when you talk about the nutrition, these are things you've probably talked about a lot with your listeners, where it's just understanding the basics of protein, fat, carbohydrates, and then nutrition based around vitamins and minerals and the balance and all that. The movement, you have the various parts where you talk about you've got motion, walking, running, climbing, crawling, jumping, swimming. You've got manipulation, which is like lifting weights, moving things. You've got mobility, talk about range of motion. Can you move your arms up over your head, things like that. There's different facets to it, and you can break them all down. And what the circles do is it helps us kind of pinpoint, again, to your point, where we might be struggling. Because, it's funny. I have a story
I
when
love
my,
stories.
so my kids, well, so I read a book. It was called Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And I don't really agree with the premise of the book, which is that we all have a different type of blood, whether you're type A, type O, and therefore you need to have a specific diet based on that. I don't really buy into that. But the huge takeaway from it was we're not all the same. We can't be prescriptive and tell, say, like everybody eat cauliflower. You can't do that. And so I got the book, I read it, and I wanted to kind of get a sense of what my family was, our blood type. And what I realized is that you don't know that. That's not something that's just kind of readily available. I thought, oh, like it's on your birth certificate or in a basic lab. It's not. So you send off to Amazon, you get the Eat Right for Your Blood type blood test. And so my kids were little at the time. And I remember like pricking their fingers and like squeezing blood onto this thing, and they're traumatized and they're crying. I'm like, it's fine. It'll be all right. Right. And it was good. And we got the blood types, and I found like 3 of us are type O and 3 of us were type A. And so it was interesting. The book made the point that type A people generally enjoy like an agrarian type diet, more like breads and grains, whereas type O are more like carnivores and meat based. And when I looked
More
at it,
cardio for the O.
exactly, yeah, right. And so it was interesting. And I was like, you know what? I can see that those 3, they do generally enjoy a diet based like that, and they thrive on that. Whereas the other 3, we needed a more meat based diet, and that's where we could thrive. And so the takeaway is that, like I was saying, we can't be prescriptive. I can't tell everyone, well, eat this kind of meat or eat these vegetables, because you might eat broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and it gives you indigestion. You feel awful. Well, that doesn't mean that those are bad foods. They're just not great for you. And conversely, other people might thrive on rice and beans. And so I think it's about being mindful of what you're doing. I think so many people just mindlessly do things where they're just eating the latest thing they've been told to eat and not listening to their body and realizing, oh, I have more energy, or I feel great, or vice versa.
I love that you made that point, because and also I'll speak to some of the women listeners on this, and it could be male too. But if you were at a certain age, you're 20, then you're 40 and you're hitting perimenopause, and then you're 50, 60 and you're hitting menopause, you can't eat the same you did at 20 and get the same results at 60. You have to change when your body is changing. You have to realize, oh, I may have to change things. And you also, I do believe, I don't fully prescribe to the blood type diet, but
Mhm.
I do believe that if I'm an O and somebody else is an A, they're digesting their food differently because of the blood. Just the whole, like, I think that there's something going on differently. And so I believe that you can't prescribe one thing for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter plan. And so it requires us to do our homework and our research and to pay attention to how we're feeling in our bodies and how our bodies are reacting to what we're filling them with. What do you think?
I think that's exactly it. It's an analogy I use a lot with our clients or with friends or with family. Is I tell them to think of it as a health savings account. And so just let's use food as an example. When you're making food or beverage selections, you have to ask yourself the fundamental question: is this going to be a deposit into my health savings account or a withdrawal? And so not all food and beverage selections have to be a deposit, but your ledger has to stay in the positive. Like the adverse effects on health start to arise when that account balance is consistently in the negative, right? You have too many withdrawals and too few deposits. So that it doesn't mean your goal has to just be making deposits all the time, right? You want a life that's void of enjoyment, but it can't just be strictly focused on this like hedonistic consumption of all these things that pass across our plates. So what happens is, for a lot of people, their health savings account gets into the negative, and that's where you start to see all these negatives in the body. You see like mental fatigue and physical discomfort, the joint inflammation, the weight gain, the muscle loss, weakening of bones, wrinkles in the face. I mean, it all goes on. And it's because they don't have a strong enough balance to withdraw against. Does that make sense?
Don't have a strong enough what?
A strong enough balance. They haven't built up enough equity in the account. Think of it like a regular checking account. You know, if you are consistently making financial deposits into a savings account month after month, you have the cash on hand when you want to take a nice trip or buy yourself something nice or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
You have it, right? But
Right.
people get into financial trouble when they keep buying themselves nice things and they're not making any deposits into their savings account, and now they're in financial
Oh,
straits. And so the same thing happens with our nutrition. And so, to your point about being mindful and thinking about it, that's how I would look at it. Whenever you are about to consume something, just ask, is it a deposit or withdrawal? And it doesn't always have to be a deposit, but it can't always be a withdrawal either.
I love that. And that kind of goes along with what I was telling my client today was it's not what you do 10% of the time,
Mhm.
that hurts you. If you're consistently doing good, at least 80% of the time, the other 20% isn't going to derail you. So like it's the principle of like if I want to go out and splurge a little, if I'm good 80% of the time, I can go have a little splurge here and there and with your nutrition and still be pretty happy with how you're feeling in your body. Because I think our body was, it was made to process things, and as long as you're not overwhelming your liver with tons of junk, a little isn't going to hurt you. That's what I think.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. So, in general, how do you tend to eat just personally? Are you a vegan? Do you eat kind of keto? Like what's your approach to eating?
Eat more a balanced plan of protein,
Mhm.
good fat, clean carbohydrates, um,
So what does that mean for the listeners?
vegetables, clean
What's like, yeah,
carbohydrates, not hot fudge cake, not
but it's so
don't
good.
unless I make it myself. See, I
Yeah.
have this gift of transforming any dessert into something that would be completely healthy with no sugar
Really?
and only good fats like coconut oil or avocado or, not Crisco, not things that are going to clog your arteries and that are a heart attack walking.
Absolutely. That's an interesting point too. People forget that sometimes that the homemade stuff, while you're not saying that that is necessarily healthy, it's not horribly unhealthy, right? But something that you buy in the store can be terrible. It's just loaded with all sorts of chemicals and awful things. But if you make it at home with just eggs, milk, butter, sugar, flour, it's it's significantly
Like
less unhealthy, right?
absolutely, like a perfect example is my client telling me her husband was making Oreos in the air
Mhm.
fryer.
Okay.
And I'm like, the air fryer is for healthy, yes, but the Oreo is already like
Yeah.
loaded with sugar. Now, could you have an Oreo or two? And I do like Oreos.
Of
Would I have
course.
an
Yeah.
Oreo? Sure, I'd have an Oreo. I haven't had one in years, but if you brought me an Oreo and it was my time to splurge, I could eat an Oreo and get away with it. It wouldn't kill me to have one Oreo. It's when but I really advise my clients a lot that if you would overeat it, you shouldn't eat it.
Absolutely right. That's me. And you ever had those Samoas, those Girl Scout cookie Samoas?
Yeah,
Yeah, those do me in. Yeah, those I eat by like the sleeve. Right. Yeah,
it
can't
only
put
be
those on.
good,
Yeah.
and also you have a sugar problem. The best way to stop cravings is don't have any sugar at all because sugar is like crack cocaine. It
Oh,
is
absolutely.
literally addictive. It's 8 times more addictive than crack, according to Dr. Mark Hyman, and
Oh, I love
he
Mark Hyman.
knows
Yeah,
his stuff.
he does. He's
So,
such a sharp guy.
yeah. And so, would I have a treat? Yes, but I prefer myself personally to have something that makes me feel good long term. I like to create. I made 3 cakes during the pandemic that I've perfected.
Really?
One is a red velvet cake, one is a chocolate cake, and one is a carrot cake. And I could take it to any event and it would get eaten, and people wouldn't realize that it was 100% made out of good, healthy ingredients.
I like cake,
So
Linda. When are you having me over? What's going on? You holding out on the cake? Come on. Carrot, those all sound good. Carrot cake, red velvet cake, sign me up. Yeah, absolutely.
yes, and my clients they've got I made a triple layer. So they got
Oh, so good.
slices upon slices. So I am gonna put this stuff in a cookbook, but um back to what I was saying
Hmm.
is just I don't I could have my cake and I feel great the next day, and I do measurements of the food. I'm like, did I want to overeat it?
Hmm.
Did I feel satisfied? Did the next day, was I bloated, or did I just not feel very good? Did I feel like you might when you've had junk food? As long as it passes those tests, I'm like, okay. And it tasted good. I'm like, we're we're good.
I
Did it
think
have
this,
quality ingredients?
well, absolutely. The quality is greatly underrated. But I think the big point you made there is, did you feel satisfied? Because I can't tell you how many people try to eat the fake thing in replacement of the real thing, and it doesn't help, right? Like, don't eat turkey bacon. Like, turkey bacon's gross. Eat real bacon, but just don't have 47 pieces of bacon. But you can have a couple slices of bacon every now and again. Like, enjoy it, because nothing's going to scratch that itch like that real piece of bacon. And to your point, you found a way to make the real thing. It's a little, you did it with love and with the right ingredients, and it was as healthy as it could be, but it satisfied you versus trying to eat some fake carrot cake, which is going to be disgusting. Right?
Well, the other thing is fake food. I mean, I experimented. Everybody was always having these cheat meals after they
Mm-hmm.
competed, and I learned you usually rebound like crazy if you jump right off of this plan into the abyss of eating everything in sight. Your rebound is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
People have what I would call a food belly after a show because they just jumped off into the abyss and just ate whatever that was in sight. And I don't even remember why I said that.
No, but you are right on. That's exactly it. But I love that you cook too. That's another thing that I find is becoming a lost art. So I pivoted from one kind of profession in my life to the other this past fall. I, like many of the 47 million Americans, kind of went into some sort of mini retirement, and I love cooking, so I went to culinary school. And it's eye-opening to see like how it's such a lost art, that so many people are just so dependent on like Uber Eats bringing them their food, that they're so disconnected from what it is and where it comes from and how it becomes what it is. And again, I think that's part of our problem. We're all eating this fake food that looks like real food, or we think it's real food, but if we just got reconnected to what we were eating, that
You brought it back to me. Now I remember.
mm-hmm.
So my experiment was
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I am going to have a cheat day like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to eat everything I want today until the end of the day, and then I'm going to be done. And I did. And when I was getting to the last bag, I think I was eating some kind of cheese puffs, or
Mm-hmm.
I think it was cheese puffs.
Are you salty, crunchy, or sweet? What's your downfall? What do you like?
My downfall? Well,
Yeah, which one
I
gets
don't,
you?
I usually don't have craves, but if I was craving, it'd probably be salty. Every
Salty,
once in a while,
crunchy.
something sweet, salty, crunchy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, like tortilla chips and salsa or something. So I'm eating these
Cheesy
cheese
poofs.
puff, yeah. And I had an epiphany. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm still not satisfied. I could eat my way through this bag. And you know why? It's fake food. It's not
Mm-hmm.
real food.
Absolutely.
You overeat fake food because it's not satisfying. It's not real food, and they jack it up with crap to make you crave it, like MSG and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So what my takeaway was is that if you're eating real food, you're satisfied. I mean, and if you make it healthy and nutritious and you're not overwhelming your taste buds with things that are way overpowering in the taste, you could actually taste the natural taste of your food and
Absolutely.
enjoy it. And when's the last time you said, oh gosh, let me have another bag of broccoli. You're not going to probably eat more than one bag. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I know
it's
exactly what you're saying.
it's filling. It fills you up.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point. I love that you point that out too, that you can actually taste the food, because how many people have like scorched earth on their tongue where they've just lived on like over salted, over sugared, over fat, and then they eat a carrot and they can't taste like, oh, that it's creamy and this nuance to it, where it just tastes like chewing cardboard. Well, yeah, because your taste buds are just fried from, like you said,
Yeah.
all the stuff they're stuffing in this fake food.
Yes, and you can retrain your taste buds, but you have to completely cut out all the overly processed food. And if you do that for 2 weeks, you'll fall in love with a sweet potato.
Totally.
You'll be like, this is ambrosia, or a Laura's lean. If you don't eat hamburger, forgive me, but a Laura's lean hamburger could taste like a steak dinner. I'm just saying, like, it's really because we are killing our taste buds with all of this over processed crap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. 100%. So.
So, what do you feel if, what would you consider good nutrition?
So, good nutrition. That's a great question. I would say Michael Pollan has a good definition. He says, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. So, for me, what I do, I eat meat, all different kinds of meat, but I look at it, where does it come from? Is it like a good, clean, wild caught fish or pasture raised animal? It's got healthy dirt, healthy grass, which makes healthy meat, which is going to be healthy food for me. I think you can have that in moderation. I, to your point, I don't think that necessarily meat is the enemy. I think it's that industrial meat that's loaded with hormones and antibiotics and who knows what else is in there. Like, I think that is not great for us. I eat a ton of vegetables, try to find what's in season, mix it up. I'm in the north, up in the suburbs of Chicago, so sometimes it's not like it is if like I lived in California, but yeah, lots of vegetables, fruits. And then I love certain carbs do great with me and some don't. So like I love sweet potatoes. I love regular potatoes. Those types of foods I can eat all day long. They're great. I
Mhm.
find like for me, wheat, if I eat, pasta and breads, I can have a little bit, but I start to get congested and like my nose gets
I
stuffy.
can't do it. The gluten
Yeah,
gets me. Yeah.
exactly. And so you just got to know your body. And so for me,
Yeah.
like I steer clear of those types of things. Not that they're bad, but they're just not great for me. And I don't do a ton of dairy. I actually do okay with it, but I really don't need a lot of cheese or milk or any of those kinds of things either. But so yeah, lots of clean meat, fruits, vegetables, and then the other stuff sparingly.
Well, we are the biggest milk drinking country, but we have the highest incidence of osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing is you could get your calcium more assimilated from leafy greens and
Absolutely.
other sources. Uh, so just realizing that, um, you don't have to get it all from dairy, and dairy has a lot going on. It could be, you got, if they've pasteurized it, if it's
Mm-hmm.
got all these hormones, from antibiotics, or the cow was pregnant, you've got all these things going on, um, in the dairy. Now, a lot of people have no problem with dairy, but some people do. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
just knowing what works for you and your body. What can you tolerate? I am sensitive to gluten, but I could have a piece of bread. Now, if I eat bread today, tomorrow, the next day, then I have a
Mm-hmm.
problem. So if I only had bread on a special occasion, I'm fine. Now, some of you guys could eat bread till the cows come home, so to speak, and bring you some milk, and you're like, give me my bread, my milk, I'm good. Um, so it's, again, it's different for everyone, but I think if you really get in tune and do kind of a process of elimination diet, you can figure out, oh, my body rocks and rolls with this, but not with that. And so I really just feel like it's kind of like a diet where we have to just figure out what what is working for me versus my husband. He lost weight doing Atkins,
Yeah.
or, you know, I lost weight when I did keto. It could be completely different. So just because one plan didn't work for you, maybe you need to be the investigator. What do you feel like, moving on a little bit from
Mhm.
eating, what do you feel then is good movement? Because that is a really, that's a good question.
So we talked about with the circles of movement. You've got locomotion, motion. You have manipulation. You've got mobility. I think self-defense should be in there a little bit. So I think if you take those four pieces, you want to figure out what is enjoyable within those. So let's start with manipulation. That's my favorite. That's like strength training. So the body works in one of two ways. It's either pushing or pulling. That's it. So I'm a big proponent of training movements and not muscles. And again, this is all within the context of health. So remember, we have to keep our goals in mind. You know, if I was trying to be a bodybuilder and I had to sculpt, muscles in specific areas, that's a different type of training, and it can be effective, but is it necessarily healthy? So we think about pushing and pulling. So I'm sure you can give good examples, right? Like upper body movements. What do you think of for push and pull?
For push and pull.
Yeah, like are there ones?
So a push up and
Exactly. Yeah,
a pull up.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
basic motions, right?
To be
So
balanced.
exactly. And so you're using those big muscles of your back, your chest, pulling and pushing. And so the point being, we don't have to overcomplicate it, right? Sometimes we
Right.
make things harder than
Right.
they have to be,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Hmm.
so I would say along those lines, lift something heavy a couple times a week. And that's all relative, right? What's heavy for you and heavy for me and heavy for someone else are all different, but just lift something heavy, push and pull it a couple times a week. I think, something along the lines of like running sprints is good, right? Something that's this high intensity, quick burst of energy. I'd say do that, once a week, pepper that in. I think having a day of, you know, slower, what we would call like longer distance type stuff, like jump in a pool and swim 10 or 15 laps, just at a slower pace, just kind of working the body out. Do some mobility once a week, do a yoga class or a Pilates, really working on strengthening your core, loosening up your shoulders, your hips, those types of things. And then at the end of the day, walk, walk a ton. I think we're just too sedentary. I think that the prevailing mindset is, well, I went to the gym and worked really hard for an hour. So for the next 23, I can sit in chairs and tables and cars and beds and I'm healthy. It's like, nothing could be further from the truth. So be active, move around a ton in your day. And I think if you do those things, you will have good movement.
And I liked what you said about that we over complicate things,
Absolutely.
because it's so true. And you could stall in your brain overthinking everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're doing something that is hard and you dread it, and you're like, you're waking up in the morning, thinking, oh, I'm not up for that. Well, what are you up for? Because you will be, once you're up for more.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could kind of start with, well, I'm going to do whatever I'm up for, um, and just not like that time in the morning. You don't want your brain to stall, because then you get stuck in inaction. So you want to
Absolutely.
just spring out of bed and be like, okay, I'm going to honor my body today, and I'm going to warm up well, and then we'll see where that takes us. Don't always have this preset notion of, I have to do this hardcore workout, because you might actually intimidate yourself out of it.
Linda, I love that. Honor your body. That is fantastic. You're so spot on. There's a guy named Pavel Tetsulin. He brought the kettlebell kind of to America a couple decades ago. That's what he's known for. And he talks about this concept called greasing the groove. And I love it. It's the idea that you're getting at, where it doesn't have to be these hardcore workouts all the time. Just wake up and, like you said, just do 10 body weight squats and 10 jumping jacks, and like you're greasing the groove. And if you do that every morning, that's going to have a significantly greater impact on your health over time versus like these sporadic hardcore workouts that you're peppering in. So I love that. Honor your body. That's great.
Love it. So now moving on to rest and relaxation,
Ah, the best
which
part, right?
many people do not make time for. And it's why, if you're not making time today for rest and relaxation, you're setting yourself up for burnout.
Oh, Linda, you are so right on. This is by far the most underrated part of the whole equation. I talk about it all the time. I tell everyone this is where the magic happens. I train a lot of student athletes, and they come to me, and if you can remember back to those days, right? Like they're just young and dumb and energetic and full of testosterone and estrogen, and they're roaring, right? And they want to work out 5 days a week and they're crushing it. And I'm like, hey, you got to slow down a little bit, right? I get that you're fired up and you're excited. I love that. And I don't want to stifle this passion that you have. But the magic's not happening when you're lifting these weights or running these sprints. The magic's happening when you go home tonight and instead of staying up till 3 a.m. on the video games, you're going to bed at 10 o'clock and getting a solid 8 to 10 hours of sleep like your body needs when you're growing and developing at that age. That's where the magic's happening. And I think so many people miss that part of the equation. They will do fantastic workouts, they'll be eating clean, and then they're staying up late, drinking wine and watching TV, and they're getting this sleep that's just not very restful. And that is the biggest detriment to your health. I would say if you can get a solid night of sleep, whatever that is, some people function well on 5, some people need 9. Again, like we said, it's not prescriptive, but if you're getting good rest where you wake up in the morning feeling refreshed, that is going to have the biggest impact on your health long term versus any of the other pieces of the puzzle.
And if you're always working, you're setting yourself up almost for this fight or flight mode where your adrenaline is up all of the time. And you could burn out your adrenals, okay? Yep. Which isn't good at all. That really slows your metabolism down and everything else. So if you're like in that fight or flight mode, then relaxation you almost feel guilty if you sit down to relax. Like you should be doing something. And so that right there, if you're feeling that, then just know you have been driving that system. You have been in that fight or flight system, driving that adrenaline up. And you literally have to plan relaxation like it's a workout time. You have to say, okay, where can I put in some relaxation in my life? And make that on your schedule, because what's going to happen is you're going to start making that central nervous system to destimulate instead of being so overly stimulated all the time. And when you do that, it like adds to everything you're doing. You're literally it's going to be better for your metabolism. It's going to be better for your muscles, your mind, and you're going to be more creative because of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. We just did our newsletter went out this week, and that was our topic, talking about that fight or flight and that rest and reset mindset where, sometimes you just need to take those 5 full belly breaths to really reset. But the point you're getting at is that sometimes it's good to be in the fight or flight mindset and have your body in that. But too many of us are in that all the time, right?
But we're not 24/7.
Exactly. We're kind of right. Like we're getting agitated about the news and work and family, and we're just constantly agitated. And like you said, that is releasing this negative cascade of hormones and all this terrible stuff's going on, where the magic is in the reset, that rest and digest time.
There you go. The digestion.
Yeah.
If you're in yoga like this, or it's relaxation time and you can't relax, then we're talking to you today. So that would be type A's usually.
Absolutely.
So now that we have like this framework somewhat from our talk today, now that we know some of the ground rules, give me the solution. Give me 3 takeaway tips.
Okay, so ready for your 3 tips? Here we go. We talked about the trident. So I would encourage your listeners to think about, okay, which part of the trident, the nutrition, the movement, or the reset, the relaxation, is my health sin that needs to be atoned for. Once we identify it, here's what we're going to try for each. So if it's on a nutrition type thing, I would say tip number one is just drink water for the next 30 days. That's it. No wine, no orange juice, no Gatorade, no coffee, none of it. And I think what you'll see is that is having an impact somewhere else down the chain, meaning maybe you are eating well, but you know what? You do like coffee and you're drinking it a little bit late in the day, and that's affecting your sleep. And now you're not getting the rest and recovery that you need, or you're having that cocktail a little late at night and your sleep's not so great. And that's really what's causing the problem for you. And when we strip that out, you can now identify that. And does that mean you can never have coffee or wine again? Of course not. But you've now identified that, and you can be more mindful of it, of getting back to the deposits and withdrawals. Hey, you know what? It's girls' night out. It's Friday. We're going to go have a great time. I am going to have one too many cocktails, and it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to have a terrible night's sleep, and I don't care, because I'm going to make it up, like you said, that other 80% of the time, but we're aware of it. And I think that's the big takeaway. I would say
I love that.
Yeah. So that's the drink. So tip one, let's just drink water, and only water for 30 days. Tip number two, if you think you have a movement challenge, I would say walk for 20 minutes a day, every day for 30 days. And this is challenging for a lot of us because we don't live in California and Florida, right? Like I said, I live in Chicago. It's going to be like 10 degrees tomorrow, but I always make it a point to bundle up and try to get that 10 to 20 minutes of movement outside, because like you were saying, inactivity leads to more inactivity, and vice versa. Activity leads to more activity. And you just like get up and get outside and get that fresh air, and you walk around for 20 minutes, you are going to be amazed at how that parlays into, you know what? I am going to clean out that closet today, or I am going to do this activity that otherwise it was easy to just melt into the couch. And then that leads to more inactivity, and that's our movement downfall. So tip number two, I would say, is try to walk 20 minutes a day, every day for the next 30 days. And then the third tip, if you've got great movement, you're eating well, but you are not getting the right recovery that you're getting, the challenge here is turn off all of your screens, everything, right? Televisions, try to turn off all those harsh LED lights, anything, phones, backlit e-readers, whatever you can think of, 1 hour before bed. And try to do it at the same time every night for 30 days. And again, this is going to be challenging on those Fridays and Saturdays when we want to stay up and watch those shows. But if you can commit to having everything just powered off, say at whatever, 10 o'clock at night, whatever time, it doesn't matter, and you can just start to decompress for an hour, you will be amazed at how much more soundly you sleep when you don't have all that pinging and buzzing and your mind's not racing, thinking about, wars and famines and crazy. Like, you just let it decompress. And in that time, play a card game or go analog and read an old school magazine or find a newspaper or whatever it is. And while those might not have great messages that settle your mind, you're getting away from the racing mind of the electronics, which tend to like make our brain run all over the place. So that would be my takeaway. So let's try to drink just water for 30 days. If that's our sin that needs to be atoned for, let's walk every day for 20 minutes for 30 days. That's our sin. Or let's turn off the electronics 1 hour before bed for 30 days and see if we can get it done for the next month.
I love it. I love it so much. This has been great today. I've enjoyed the conversation from start to finish thoroughly. I love your easygoing style.
Thank you.
And I feel like it's so good for the listeners because you made it simple, really. You simplified what we all think is so complicated. And so for that, I really, truly appreciated you today. And you have something for the listeners.
Absolutely.
You tell
Absolutely.
them what it is.
So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. So the book that we've been talking about is called Death Resistant, a common sense guide to live long and drop dead healthy. And I want to make it free to all of your listeners. It can be bought anywhere, right? Amazon, all the places you would buy a book. But if they go to our website, mightyoakathletic.com/sweat10, we're going to have it set up where they can download the ebook for free. And let's get a conversation started online. We'll start what I like to ask people is, what's your biggest health challenge? And so what we can do is then we can kind of go through the book together as a group, and we can start a conversation online talking about, oh, I read this chapter. Here's the biggest health challenge, and let's build a nice community, finding solutions for each other, and share the goodness that we all want to get to, right?
Love that. I love that. Again, so if you want to get in touch with Michael online, at Instagram, it is Mighty Oak Athletic, and Facebook. And then your website is mightyoakathletic.com, right?
Absolutely. And then you put /sweat10 at the end, and you can get that free book.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. Bye, everyone.